Hey everyone, it's Alex Miller at Capnion here. You may have seen some viral news articles about consulting firm McKinsey's new AI tool called Lilli that they're reportedly using a whole lot successfully. The story is vaguely that you can use it to do things like generating common documents, PowerPoints, other types of presentation, collateral, replacing a lot of work by junior analysts, and reportedly doing 10% of the work in some particular category. I'm going to unpack this story from various directions, and I'm particularly going to talk about the pros and cons of doing such a thing yourself and exposing yourself to being downstream from somebody else doing it. First, speaking as the owner of a small consulting firm and also as just a general frustrated consumer, I see a lot in this story about why you might want to work with a smaller company. And on the former, I'm a little bit biased, so I'll just stick to being a frustrated consumer. I think on the long arc of time, it's gotten worse and worse. When you do business with a larger company, it can be very confusing. What am I buying? And then how does that story evolve as you go through the process of working with that company? And to provide a very tangible example, I am relatively new in being a first-time homeowner. We had a lot of exciting tornadoes in St. Louis recently. Mercifully, nothing too crazy happened to me, but I had to do some minor repairs. In 2025, if you just Google these things, you're going to end up talking to a big company. You're not talking to the big company. You're talking to some bureaucratic lead generation service who's going to lie to you about what kind of service you might eventually be provided, and you're going to end up talking to a salesman about replacing all of your vinyl siding that is not what you want at all. And similarly, do people sign on to have AI generate the advice they're going to view? Hopefully there's a human in the loop at McKinsey checking what's in these PowerPoints, but the more of that you do, the less point there is. So I just have a lot of questions. If I were somebody that was going to do business with McKinsey, I would also note between you and me that there's a certain conservatism in hiring McKinsey. Nobody got fired for hiring McKinsey, and maybe that's still true, and this AI thing really doesn't matter for their optical purposes. Also, there's no such thing as bad press. Moving on, most of my griping now aside, this is pretty exciting. These things are very technologically feasible in 2025. I find it plausible this thing is working really well, and there's really no reason to object to it being AI. I think it's worth introducing a kind of poor man's slippery slope to agentic AI here, and that you talk to everyday people who've developed really interesting processes for automating. I read 90 legal briefs, and then I generate this particular type of summary. And I had ChatGPT tell me how to write this Python script that then submits more stuff to ChatGPT, and it just does it. These are small-time operations doing these things. You can very easily imagine just doing more and more of this kind of thing at more and more scale for more and more people. As demands become more complicated, you have more sophisticated guardrails about all the different things it might be doing and questions people might be asking. And this isn't how it probably played out. McKinsey probably sat down and planned it, but this is the slippery slope to agentic AI of you're doing a lot of cool stuff, speeding up your work with an LLM. Then you notice you're once again doing some repetitive things, and some of your quality control is not rocket science. You could also pass off to the LLM and just build that system. This approach is really powerful. Some of the hype about it is annoying. It's interesting to note the marginal piece that makes it agentic is not really the high-tech AI piece. It's just the piece of the extra machinery making sure that this thing stays on task and focuses on your problem and just doesn't run off and do weird hallucinations and generally get confused. To switch gears once again, I think a really useful final thought about this, and it's really important if you're anywhere near product or kind of sales, customers facing sales stuff. Do people want AI, especially if they know about it? So I would ask you to examine on social media. People are often really mad at other people they perceive have used AI to spam social media. It's actually slightly different questions and pretty important. Okay, does the AI do a good job? Yes or no? Even if the AI does a good job, will the customer or some other stakeholder nevertheless be mad to learn that AI is doing the job? And you could argue that, hey, this is not rational to be mad, but there's a lot about commerce and the fine window dressing of a product, broadly considered, that isn't totally rational. And I would say we're at a very delicate moment right now of it's not just whether the AI works. You really do have to let yourself get sucked into everything that all your relevant holders think about. What is AI? People are going to have different ideas. Is AI fundamentally something you can eventually trust, or is it fundamentally objectionable to introduce it into particular settings? We're going to see more of that in the social realm as people turn to AI for companionship. Is there something prima facie bad about that, or is it just great to get companionship wherever you can? These are things to keep an eye on, and McKinsey, I would say, is probably a relatively particular case in that it's probably good for them just to be in the news, being good at AI. But you could be in a different line of work and do something similar, and maybe people get mad at you. And if you want to just track more about these kinds of issues, you could just probably scroll down in the feed from where you're consuming this information right now, and somebody's mad at somebody else for putting AI where it shouldn't be. So closing thoughts, product psychology of AI kind of falls between the cracks in our conversation. This is a great example to think about. What do people want? What will they tolerate? What are they excited about on the AI front? And that's something you're going to have to be really careful with in the coming